Normally in a Bentley, when you push this button, something very special happens. A W12, or at the very least, a V8 fires into life. But not in this Bentley. In this Bentley, when you push the power button, all you hear is silence.
And that's because this Bentley, the Flying Spur Hybrid, is electrified. It does away with the usual W12 and V8 Bentley fireworks. Instead, it uses a 2.9-litre twin-turbo V6 assisted by batteries and an electric motor. The price, if you're interested, is £223,000, over £50,000 more than the V8. So what do you get for your money?
Normally, it just runs on electric power. By default, the electric motor mounted at the front will drive the front wheels. If you need a bit more extra power, then that 2.9-litre V6 fires into life and sends power to the wheels at the back. Typical plug-in hybrid, and we've seen it work in countless cars. Does it work in a Bentley? Right, let's have a bit of launch control, shall we? So, sport mode. Traction off, pre-flight checks, foot on the brake, accelerate. Sounds a bit different, doesn't it? All right, send it. Oh, yes. I tell you what, it gets off the line all right. Yeah, it's definitely quick enough. Definitely quick enough. But even though the speed is there, what I want to know is, where's the drama?
The V6 engine sends 410 horsepower to the rear wheels, and the electric motor supplies 138 horsepower to the front. But because both never make their peak torque at the same time, peak engine power arrives just as the e-motor's power begins to tail off. Total system output is 536 horsepower, making this the least powerful Flying Spur on sale. That means 0 to 62 in 4.1, flat out 177 miles an hour, a whole tenth and 20 miles an hour slower than the V8.
The speed is actually okay. I mean, how often are we going to be doing 177 miles an hour? I think my problem is the sound. It sounds like not a Bentley. It sounds like a Toyota? As questionable as it might sound, I don't think there's any debate about the way this car looks. It is tremendous. Lovely, lovely thing, the Flying Spur. The only differences between this, the V8, and the W12 are these badges, which say hybrid on the sides, and in fact you get 2 fuel filler caps, one for your petrol and one for charging the battery. Apart from that, business as usual. This one's finished in British Racing Green. I'll let you in a little secret, I'm not the world's biggest fan of British Racing Green. You gotta have the right car to do it justice, but this absolutely does it justice. It's also got the black line specification, which replaces the chrome you normally get around the grille, the window frame, and the headlights with gloss black items. It's also got the gloss black Flying B with built-in anti-theft protection. There she goes. And it's got big, chunky 22-inch, 10-spoke, gloss black alloy wheels, which give it a really mean stance of being attacked by a bumblebee. Speaking of which, my favorite element on the car is this almost bumblebee colored strip along the outer edge, which Bentley calls flame. And this matches the interior almost perfectly.
And that interior is one of the best in the business. In this case, finished in Newmarket tan, black, and dark fiddleback eucalyptus wood veneer, if you're interested. The twin sunroofs, as well as the sun blinds, provide shade or light on demand, and the majestic vent controls and plethora of physical buttons on the center console are a welcome departure from the overly digitized interiors of many modern cars.
That's not to say there aren't toys galore. There are, trust me, this is a Flying Spur after all. You have the option of a fridge in the back. It's not in this particular car, but they do give you the choice. Plus, around here in the center console, you have this very, very cool detachable tablet, which allows you to control various settings in the car, including climate control, media playback, the blinds that I mentioned earlier. You can even deploy the Flying B, and you don't have to be stood inside the car to use it. You can be outside and it'll work just fine. Speaking of screens, this one is extremely clever. You might have seen this before. Hasn't really been changed for this generation, but it's still very, very cool. You've got your basic infotainment setup just here, but if you press the screen button, it rotates to give you your outside air temperature, your compass heading, and also a timer. If you hold the screen button, it rotates to give you, look at that, a solid fascia, which basically minimizes the distraction from the screen to allow you to concentrate on driving. In the driver display, there's a couple of very cool features too, including night vision, which you can use during the day. Who else gives you night vision you can use during the bright sunshine? Only Bentley. So what's it like to drive then? Well, there are 4 main driving modes. There's sport mode, in which the car is at its most aggressive. It uses the batteries and the motor and the ICE engine to basically give you as much performance as possible. The suspension is stiff, the steering is firm. If that's a bit too hardcore for you, well, then there's Bentley mode, which is a bit of a Goldilocks setting where everything is kind of at a happy medium. Then there's comfort, which speaks for itself. And then there's a custom mode where you can choose the settings of the drivetrain, the suspension, and the steering as you see fit. How do you put it into electric mode? Well, there isn't a big green button that says EV on it. Instead, you've got to go hunting through the menu to find the hybrid submenu, in which you'll find 3 options: EV drive, hybrid, and hold. In EV drive, it defaults to giving you predominantly an electric experience, while in hybrid, it gives you a clever mix of petrol and electric, while in hold, it holds onto the power that's in the battery for you to deploy as you see fit at a later time. A word of warning though, this car will not depend exclusively on electric or petrol. It will always use a bit of electricity or a bit of petrol depending on the situation as it sees fit.
As for fuel economy, with a full battery, it'll deliver a combined 85.6 miles per gallon. When the battery is exhausted, Bentley claim as high as 27 miles per gallon. For reference, the V8 manages 22 miles per gallon at best, while the W12 manages 19. In full electric mode, the hybrid Spur has a range of up to 25.5 miles.
That is very welcome. When you're cruising in electric mode in this car, it's staggeringly quiet and smooth. You can actually drive this car at well over motorway speeds in electric mode, and there's very little wind noise, very little road noise, and from that perspective, it might actually be the best Bentley ever. Normally in a plug-in hybrid, when the ICE engine kicks in, it kind of ruins the experience, and suddenly you're dragged back down to earth and you realize, oh, I'm not running on electrons anymore. But in this, you don't get that. When the combustion engine kicks in, it's so smooth that unless you're flooring it, you barely actually notice it's on. It does beg the question though, is it a bit too quiet? Because you start to hear other noises that you wouldn't have noticed in an ordinary Bentley. For example, stones being kicked up underneath the car, the sound of leather on leather, panels almost creaking or vibrating at a frequency that you wouldn't have got in a standard V8 or W12. The quietness is good, but you can definitely have too much of a good thing. There are 2 other downsides. One is handling and the other is brakes. Let's talk about the handling. When you're in Bentley or comfort mode, it does roll around quite a lot in the corners and you do feel the weight. This thing weighs over 2.5 tons. It's basically around 200 to 300 kilograms heavier than the V8 version of the Flying Spur, and you do notice it when you're chucking it into the bends. Things are a little bit better in sport mode. It tightens up the body control and lets you corner flatter through corners. But again, the weight is difficult to disguise. And actually, I do have to ask myself though, is it fun? I'm not sure it's fun. It's capable, certainly, but enjoyable? I don't think so. Once you've chucked it through a corner once or twice, there's no real incentive to keep doing it. And then there are the brakes, regenerative braking and physical braking, and they're strong, they work well, but the blending of those 2 systems seems a little bit off for me. It's very difficult to stop this car smoothly. You tap the brake and you get a little bit too much assistance from one or the other, and then suddenly you lift off and then you get a different mixture between the 2, and it just feels inconsistent.
On the subject of regen, that of course helps keep the battery topped up, but you can also charge the Flying Spur Hybrid from the mains, albeit not very quickly. Its 14.1 kilowatt-hour battery pack, that's a net figure by the way, takes 2.5 hours to top up from a dedicated 7 kilowatt home charger, or around twice as long from a 3-pin plug.
Ultimately then, this is a car of two halves. The electric side is phenomenal. It gives you everything that you want from a luxury car. And in fact, this might be the best Bentley ever. However, the jury is definitely still out on the petrol side. It's an effective powertrain, it's impressive and it's fast, but the character is something that I'm gonna take a little while to get used to. Weirdly, I'd actually prefer if the Flying Spur was a full electric car or even a V8 hybrid. Both of those options I think would be superior to this.
That is a personal preference from someone who is absolutely nitpicking, but I think it is fair to judge Bentleys by high standards. Regardless, by most measures, the Flying Spur Hybrid is a wonderful thing to experience, and I look forward to seeing what electrification allows Bentley to do next.